All right, good morning. All right. Would make your way to Genesis chapter 29. We're going to try to make our way. We're taking this again in large sections, but a large section out of this is 29 and 30. So we're gonna make our way through there. If time permits, we'll hit 31, but I think that's probably going to wait for a week or so. Just by way of scheduling. Next week, I'll be out. So tell your friends, bring them. Right. I'll be going to Harding's lectureship. Jerry Snyder is going to teach the class next week, and he has something different that he's going to walk through. So it won't be a continuation. In Genesis, we'll pick that up when I get back. So I know you're eagerly awaiting that. So tell your friends that too, so they can sleep in or whatever. All right. So chapter 29, we've had Jacob and his mother who have conspired to get the blessing from Isaac, and now she has sent him back to her family to find a wife. Esau has married some Hittite women that that's not a good thing, and then he ends up marrying somebody from the line of Ishmael to try to help that, but she sends him back home. So that's where we're going to pick up, chapter 29. Jacob went on his journey, came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field. Behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" And they said, "We're from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" And they said, "It is well. See, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." And he said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go on, pasture them." They said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep. She was a shepherdess. Now as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother. No, that's not there. I just added that one. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman. He was Rebekah's son. She ran and told her father. Okay. It seems that the author wants to make a point here, right, that this is family, right? Laban, Rebekah's brother. There's a couple of things that that's I think maybe worth noting a little bit. Is Jacob's journey. Through Jacob's journey, we see Jacob change quite a bit, and this is one of those spots on the front end of his journey where I think we're going to see things different when he begins to come back toward Canaan. If you go back to Genesis chapter 24, we find Abraham sending a servant back home to find a wife for Isaac. Right? If you remember that story or not, just in a nutshell, he has this servant. He's going to send him back because he wants a wife for Isaac back from there instead of from the people in the land. And so he does. So the servant gathers, I think it's 10 camels, all kinds of gifts to present, makes his way there, has the camels kneel out by, again, there's a well involved, which a lot of things go on around the well there because it's an important spot. But the servant who says, okay, all right, Lord, Abraham has sent me here for a wife for Isaac, so here's what it's almost like, here's what I'm proposing, right? Let this woman who goes and waters my camels too, let her be the one. Now I want you to contrast the servant with Jacob. Jacob shows up back home back at Rebekah's family with nothing. He has no gifts. He has no big grand things planned. And when it comes to him finding a wife, other than the fact that that mom has told him that it needs to come from the family, there's not a prayer uttered by Jacob, is there? Right? I point that out because we're going to see Jacob change quite a bit over the next several years and even further into his life. But at this point, we watch as Jacob he's just kind of there. And God's working whether he knows it or not. That's kind of strange. But this is really about what God's up to, right? So we have this well, and he sees a well. It's a strange thing. Just a little confusing things about here. He sees a well, and he sees some flocks, and he tells the shepherds, it's time that you watered them and moved on, and they went, no, we can't, because not everybody's here. So the way I understand it is that this is part of life in that part of the country. Wells, it's not a very well-watered place. And so the various groups, the various families share these resources. And we see this happen here. We can't take this off until everybody shows up. And then we can. So Jacob meets Rachel. He already knows that she's Laban's daughter. And when he tells her why, who he is and why he's there, she runs back home. Right? And then the fun begins. Go to verse, let's just follow right along where we stopped there, 13. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him. He embraced him, kissed him, brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all of these things. And Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you're my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak. But Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel. He said, I'll serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban says, it's better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Favoritism has played a big role so far, and is going to continue to. There's this comment of Leah's eyes are weak. I don't know if anybody knows exactly what that means. Okay? What I've gotten from this is that other ways that this word is translated in the Old Testament, about kind and tender and those kinds of things. So that really is not a lot of help either, because I keep trying to picture this in my mind, what this means. But I think what it really boils down to is this. It's not that Leah is the ugly duckling of the bunch. She's not. It's just that Rachel is prettier. That pretty much sums it up, right? It's not that she's just, here in a little bit, whenever Laban kind of pulls the wool over Jacob's eyes, so to speak. We sometimes, maybe get the impression that, well, you got to get Leah married off because, yeah, she doesn't have a lot of hope. That's not true, right? It's just that Jacob seems to love her more. So he agrees for 7 years. 7 years is kind of, it's significant in a lot of ways, I think. But one of them is that the typical wages that he would earn as a shepherd, which is what he's going to do for Laban. The typical wages that he would earn as a shepherd, this turns out to be somewhere about twice of what the normal bride price would be. And he goes, I'm in. So, there's something here, right? He's excited about this. All right. 7 years go by, and the author just kind of breezes right through that. We'll hear more about what the 7 years look like in a little while. Not just these 7, but the next. And they just breeze right through. And it comes time, Jacob says, all right, time is done. I've been marking this off on the calendar. 7 years, it's time. It's still strange to me. There's some fun stuff about this, but anyway, they have the wedding celebration, which could last up to a week. It really could. It's quite a festival. But Jacob and who he thinks is Rachel consummate their marriage, only to find out the next morning that it's Leah. Now, I got questions, but we're not going to dwell on those. But there is this. This is extra biblical sources. The teaching of the rabbis in the Jewish Bible, commentaries by them, is that that Rachel and Leah, Rachel wants to do right by Leah, and that she actually has some things, jewelry, those kinds of things that belong to her, and she gives those to Leah so that Jacob will think it's Rachel. I don't know. But it helps me a little, right? Because I don't know about the rest of you. They're going, wait, who are you, right? So when Jacob finds out, which is, right, come on, this is, the irony is so great here. He goes into his old blinding father, claiming to be his older brother. And it's not until later that Isaac discovers, give the blessing to the wrong one. And now it's just completely flipped, isn't it? That for whatever reason, he doesn't recognize who this is until it's too late. And going, okay, now what? So he goes to Laban. Laban says, hey, of course this is what we did, because this is what we do. Can't marry off the youngest before the oldest. It's funny to me, may not be to you, we'll find out. That's the way we've always done things. It's been an excuse for a long time, isn't it? Well, we have to. That's the way we've always done it, right? But anyway. Jacob, go down to verse 25. In the morning, behold, it was Leah. Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why have you deceived me? Laban said, it is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we'll give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Jacob did so, completed her week, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. Before this, he's given another one to Leah. Jacob went into Rachel also. He loved Rachel more than Leah and served Laban for another 7 years. If we're keeping track at home, that's 4 times the bride price for 2. Laban's coming out really, really well here. And we'll hear more about that in a little bit. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son. She called his name Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. She called his name Simeon. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. I don't know what to make of this, okay? So it's something to think about. Now, do we hear this with Leah? Maybe this time. Maybe now. Kind of a little sympathy for her, don't is anybody else, or is that just me? Maybe this time. Maybe this will do it. And this is jumping outside of my notes. I think we put ourselves in a dangerous spot when our goal's wrong. How about that? Maybe this time. Maybe if I do this, then they'll like me. Maybe if I do this, then, right? Just something to think about. It's also quite interesting, I think, that as we'll read about the rest of the children, or at least the ones that are listed, that from this marriage that Jacob didn't want, okay, this wasn't what he was after, come the tribe of Levi and the tribe of Judah. Funny how God works, right? Sometimes in spite of what we wanted, He seems to work things out. When Rachel saw she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Then she said, Here's my servant, Bilhah. Go into her that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her. So she gave him her servant, Bilhah, as a wife. Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. And Rachel said, "God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. Rachel's servant, Bilhah, conceived again, bore Jacob a second son. Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings, I have wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed." She called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." She called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." She called his name Asher. Well, here it is again. Well, Rachel in particular, we have the barren wife and the servant. Not quite as dramatic as Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, right? But it's the same kind of thing. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field, brought them to his mother Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." She said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." He lay with her that night. God listened to Leah. She conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages, because I gave my servant to my husband." She called his name Issachar. Leah conceived again, bore Jacob a sixth son. Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me, because I have borne him six sons." So she called his name Zebulun. Afterwards, she bore him a daughter, called her name Dinah. God remembered Rachel. God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." She called his name Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." Okay, we got a really weird story here about the mandrakes. So, what I understand is that mandrakes were believed to have magical properties. Okay? There's a bit of a difference and a bit of discussion and disagreement between scholars on exactly what these are, and I think at the end of the story they both said the same thing. But they are believed to have some kind of special property, especially as for two things. One is an aphrodisiac, and the second one is to cure fertility, or infertility. Sorry, cure fertility another way. But anyway, I'll let you think about that one. But anyway, cure infertility. So when Leah has the mandrakes, Rachel obviously wants them. Because if this is true, if these things work the way that they think they do, and so I read one scholar, and I can't remember if it's Walton or if it's Whitworth. He said Rachel kind of trading Jacob for the mandrakes here. Her attitude may have been, "Yeah, you can sleep with Jacob, because if these work, it'll be the last time, right? If I'm starting to bear children, this is probably it." Boy, dysfunction. Does that word come to anybody else's mind when we look at this group? Man. And isn't it amazing that God works through that dysfunction? But I hope it's not surprising, because God works through our dysfunction. Right? I mean, we look at this and we go, "Oh, hold on a minute. Now, we've not done anything that looks like this." No, I was going to ask for a show of hands if we had, but no, we won't do that. Right? But come on, dysfunction, we got it. And if God didn't work through dysfunction and wasn't able to overcome the dysfunction of his creation, we'd be in a really bad shape, wouldn't we? And he does. It's interesting, and we'll get to her in a little while, just a little bit down the road, that so far, all we have talked about are sons. Right? It's been all of them, with one exception. Dinah. Now, I wonder, is that because that's all they had were sons, except for Dinah? Maybe, maybe not. Or how does she figure in? Because they're drawing our attention to this. Right? I think that the author draws our attention to this. Most of the time, and I don't mean any disrespect to the ladies, none at all. But most of the time, it's the guys that get talked about here, right? Jump way, way ahead to the genealogy of Jesus. Matthew's in particular. It goes through father to son to father to son, with the exception of a few, which I think Matthew's drawing our attention to. Right? Ruth, Rahab, those kind. They're going, there's something there we need to see. And I think maybe the same thing here, and we're going to get to Dinah a little bit later. She figures in to the story of Jacob a little bit more. All right. But in the end, God remembers Rachel. Love that phrase, because that gets repeated throughout Scripture too, that God remembers. And it's not like God's ever forgotten. Right? But now's the time. Israel is enslaved in Egypt, and God remembers his covenant with Abraham and released him. Right? It's not that he ever forgot it, but now there's something about the timing. Right? And it's always fun too, because it is God's timing and not ours, and so that makes it even more difficult, because we would like for him to remember now. But there's something else he's waiting for. But anyway, and so Joseph comes along, and we know that Joseph's going to play a big role here in a little while. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my home and country." Okay. I think this is another thing I found in this. We're gonna get to hear about Laban's treatment of his daughters and Jacob here in just a little bit. But as soon as Joseph is born, now they can go. There's a possibility, and that's all there is. But it's a possibility of, in the time of that culture, that she is not considered fully his wife until she has children. So they can't leave until Joseph is born. But then he says, "Let's go. Give me my wives, my children, for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given to you." Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I'll give it." Jacob said, "You yourself know how I have served you, how your livestock has fared with me. You had a little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also?" And he said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they will be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me when you come to look in into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, will be counted stolen. Laban said, good. Let it be as you have said. But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Well, Laban has not given up. All right? But you think about this, it's a pretty ingenious way of separating this out and what he gets. Maybe he's got a hint. I don't know. Maybe it's from the fact that he married the younger one and got the older one. I don't know. That he figures that Laban might be a little bit less than trustworthy. How's that? And so what's going to determine this is the color of the livestock. Simple. Right? That way we know what's yours and we know what's mine. If you come and you look at what I say is mine and right, it's the wrong color, then you can say I've stolen it. But if not, the other way. Now Laban still seems to try to do this as shifty as he can, right, and get all these things out. Jacob is not asking, he's really not. He's not asking for a lot. According to kind of the custom of the way shepherds are dealt with and wages that could be paid to a shepherd, they could receive up to, I'm trying to remember this right, up to 20% of flock, right? Up to 20% of some of the gain for their work. This would typically be the spotted, the speckled, the striped, and the black would typically be far less than 20% of the herd. So he's not asking for the moon here, right? But Laban is still trying to get him out of there or keep him, right? Either get him out of there with as little as possible or keep him there, right? Okay. 37, Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees, peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in the front of the sticks, so that the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart, did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, they might breed among the sticks. For the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. The feebler would be Laban's, stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, camels, and donkeys. This whole business with the branches, it seems this is superstition. Okay, I don't know that there's anything actually behind this. I could, and maybe I'm wrong, and I may have missed it. Wouldn't be the first time. But it seems that a couple of things that Jacob has got going, right? One is that he's smart enough to know that he wants the stronger of the bunch, right? So he's after that. And that for some reason, and I don't know, again, I honestly do not know where this comes from, and if somebody does, that's great. But this idea of the branches, again, that seems to be superstition on Jacob's part. But that's not really the point, is it? Because God's blessing Jacob, right? And even though Jacob's, he's not showing a great amount of faith yet, I don't think, has he? Or did I miss it? God's still moving in that direction. All right. Let's go to 31. Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he has gained all his wealth. Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was. And he said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me, changed my wages 10 times, but God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the stripes shall be your wages, then all the flock bore stripes. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given it to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. And the angel of the Lord said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. He said, lift up your eyes and see, all the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So what's supposed to happen, and we're just now finding this out. Shouldn't surprise us, but what's supposed to happen is that with the bride price, it's supposed to be kept, and it's supposed to be kept for, oddly enough, for the bride. If there is death, like the death of the husband, if there is a parting of or divorce, right, something like that, where they have to come back, they are not left without. This is supposed to be held on to by the family of the bride, for the bride, in case of this kind of emergency. That's a part of it. And what we find out here, and again, we shouldn't be shocked, what we find out here is that those 14 years of wages that Laban has saved because of Jacob's work, not just the 14 years, but if we would go back through and count the kids again, those don't happen like, they're spaced out, right? So these other years that he has held on to this, that Laban has taken all of it, that the girls have nothing. And that they see that their father is treating them, they say, as foreigners. Just a quick thing. The way that we deal with people will always come back to us, I think. That make sense? Laban, and again, it's easy to paint him as the villain because we've read about him. But the way he has dealt with, and the way he dealt with Jacob, which is also family, by the way. Let's don't forget, Laban is Rebekah's brother. The way he's dealt with family there, and the way he's dealt with his own daughters, has come back home. So that if he expected, which he still expects, as we keep reading, he still expects Jacob to stay. He still thinks they're just going to stay there. He's just going to keep doing this kind of thing. And maybe he even expects somehow or another, and I don't know. I'm getting inside somebody's head, and I don't even like being in my own. But maybe he even expects that his daughters are going to pull Jacob in that direction too. Right? But what has come out is, no, we see how he's treated. I think that just, it ought to remind us, right, as in our dealings with people close to us and people that aren't so close to us, that kind of thing has a way of coming back to bite us if we're not careful. That make sense? I mean, it may not be the exact point that the author of Genesis is trying to make here, but I sure think it's there. I think we see it. See, what we get a little bit of a glimpse, and we get more of this as we move on into chapter 31 of what those 14 years look like, at least those 14 years, plus all the years of having these children and staying there with Laban has looked like. And it's not been good. It's not just that he's taken the money that he should have been saving for his daughters, who now say we have nothing because he's taken it, but it's the way that he's treated Jacob that we had no idea until we get a little bit further in. So let's keep going. Jacob arose, set his sons and wives on camels, drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear sheep. Rachel stole her father's household gods. Jacob tricked Laban, the Aramean, by not telling them that he intended to flee. He fled with all he had, arose and crossed the Euphrates, and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban, on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him, and he pursued him for 7 days, and followed close after him into the country of Gilead. God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night, said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban overtook Jacob. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country. Laban with his kinsman pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? That you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me, so that I may have sent you away with mirth and song and tambourine and lyre? Why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you've done foolishly. It's my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night and said, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you've gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have done, or what I have that is yours, and take it." Jacob did not know Rachel had stolen them. Household gods. That's, oh man, we're about out of time. Let's deal with that really quick. Household gods. We see this gets us a picture also of the background and the culture out of which Abraham comes. Right? We don't want to forget Abraham. Right? God calls Abraham out of the Ur of the Chaldees to follow him to a land that God will show him. Which is remarkable in a lot of ways. But one of the things that seems remarkable is that God calls Abraham and Abraham goes, when this is the culture out of what is Abraham comes. It's a little bit later on, and I don't want to get too far afield, but a little bit later on in the history of Israel, when Joshua stands before the people of Israel, right before Joshua dies. And he said that famous speech of "choose today." Right, we remember that one. "Choose this day who you will serve. Will it be the gods that your fathers served beyond the river?" I think that's talking about Abraham's family, because here they are, the household gods. The household gods are small, at least that seems to be the consensus. They are small, and they are involved with ancestor worship or ancestor veneration. How about that? They're ties to family, ties to the land, all of those kinds of things. But they are, it's why they're called household gods. It seems to be a family kind of thing. Rachel has taken them, which why I don't really get. I get a little of it, but these household gods are to be passed down, again, generation to generation, and they usually go to the firstborn sons. Neither Rachel nor Jacob have any claim to these, but she takes them. She hides them in her tent, and when they come to search, and Jacob has no idea that this happened. Which again, I think, hopefully we see the hand of God in here. Right? Because Jacob goes, whoever has your stuff, we'll just kill him. Right? He doesn't say it quite that bluntly, but that's pretty much it. They won't live. So you just search. Make yourself at home. Now, I'm just assuming, that Rachel has heard this. Huh? Because when they come to search her tent, she says, I can't get up. Right? It's her time of the month, she says. Now, for the ancient Near East, and you'll see this when it gets to the law of Moses. This is considered a time when not just the woman, but everything around her, right, is unclean. Right? There's something going on here, so we're unclean. So they don't make a very thorough search, right? But they go on their way. We find out that that Laban has treated Jacob and the daughters pretty horribly. He says, why didn't you just let me throw a party? And I'm wondering if Jacob goes, last time we threw a party, I ended up married to your older daughter. Right? Not doing that again, right? If you move on through 31, which we're not going to get to, and we're already a little bit behind, let me finish this up really quick. What we'll find is that Laban has been incredibly unfair. He has treated Jacob worse than a normal servant would be treated. That if there's any losses, Jacob's responsible no matter what, which is not the way that it's done. And not just that, the way that he's treated his daughters have left this idea of going, we just want out. And so now Jacob is going to make his way home where God wanted him to start with. And now, if we've listened, we've noticed that now Jacob is starting to listen a little bit more to who he referred to earlier as the God of his father. And pretty soon it's going to be his God as he's watched what it is that he's done. Let's close with prayer. Father, we thank you so much for today and for all that you do for us. We're thankful that you work in us and have called us to work with you despite our dysfunction. We're thankful for the ways that we see you work in these ancient texts. And our prayer is, Father, that our eyes are open to see you work today in our own lives. That you are not just the God of our fathers, but you're our God. The one who has made great and precious promises that you will always remember. Help us to be mindful of who you are as we think about the blessings that we have, that they come from you, and that the way that we respond to and deal with those blessings. Thank you, Father, again for our time together this morning, and we love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.